Chris Miller, welcome to Tasty Humans, powered by Watson and here in Motivate's podcast studio in Media One Hotel. Just to keep everyone informed, we met about 20 minutes ago.
Yep.
And even then I had to ask you, what do? You came through a mutual friend. Luckily, we haven't been recording what we've been talking about already. But, who are you? What do you do?
Well, as you say, my name is Chris Miller. I run a company called Incremental, which is a training and coaching business that focuses on the small changes to make big positive change in people's lives, whether that be in the workplace or personally.
So as a coach, are you certified or... What? Because obviously there's this disconnect sometimes between mentors, coaches, leaders, stuff like that. And I know through personal experiences that you have to go through certain steps to become a certifiable coach. So
Yes.
to sort of
I think certified coach.
Certifiable. Oh, certifiable.
So I'm coming to the end of my the first level. So it's called the ACC, and that's overseen by the International Coaching Federation. So I've been doing that course for about 8 months. I've probably got another 3 months to go, but that's all looking good. So, and what that does is just, it gives you the groundwork, and it also, the great thing with the ICF is it gives you guidelines so that protects both the coach and the coachee. So
elaborate on that. So and I say it because all leaders, people that manage teams, run departments, we all think we give the best advice. What are some of the biggest things you've noticed as guidelines that makes it all quite...
I mean, that there is a process whereby if the coachee feels that something that the coach has done has been outside of the code of ethics, that they have a recourse to go to the ICF and raise a complaint.
Okay.
And then dependent on how serious that was and whether or not that was, grounded, then... there is the potential for the coach to have their coaching certification removed. So then they're not accredited. Now, I think what we've seen since the rise of COVID has been a groundswell of people calling themselves coaches.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. And to go back to your point, I generally feel, and one of the reasons that I wanted to do the course was because I don't want to be a person who just feels that their opinion is worthwhile and that everybody should listen to them. And that's certainly not what coaching is about, where we talk about mentoring or coaching. Mentoring is where you have experience in that area and you're able to kind of give advice to a person. Coaching is, I think I'll kind of paraphrase from the ICF's handbook, but it's about having deep conversations with somebody where the coachee, the person being coached, is questioned by the coach to elicit the answers that are already inside them. So whereby, I suppose to all intents and purposes, it's a lot like having a friend to talk to. But as coaches, we're not supposed to advise, we're not supposed to guide, we're supposed to question. So when somebody has whatever issue it is, you're asking them questions just to try and elicit and get deep into why they're having a problem around that area. So it's not about advice, which, as I say, is more mentoring, and it's very forward focused as well. So it's focused on the present, but also kind of what steps are you going to take.
That's quite correct. I was going to, because I've never heard a coach, I spoke to a couple of coaches, I've never heard them really put it that way. It sounds like there's a lot of psychological training in the course. Do you have to really start to understand, does it do a lot of, like I say, sort of teach you about people? I know that might sound quite obvious.
Yeah.
But it's more like I say, mentoring, as you said, you're supposed to know the subject matter. Coaching, it doesn't matter if you do or you don't.
Yeah.
So you're almost undertaking a massive psychology course.
Yeah, to a certain degree, I guess that's important. And what I hope is that, as I become more and more competent at coaching, I'll get better and better at that. I think, on a very basic level, what it makes you do is shut up.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because you're not there to talk, you're there to listen. Because by listening and observing the individual and, the various kind of non-verbal cues that they express whilst they're talking, that enables you then to ask better questions. But it's very much about listening. My tutor puts it that so we have to do a certain number of calls that get assessed, like properly assessed by the ICF accredited markers. And in that, if you're talking for more than 25% of the total hour, let's say, then that would fail because you're doing too much of what the client should be doing.
It's very interesting. So essentially, like you said, you're a friend, but they're paying you to do it. I'm just making like that statement. So you've been in Dubai now 17 years?
17 years.
And sort of what made you come out here? What got you out of the UK?
I mean, I've always had itchy feet. When I lived in the UK, and we moved around a fair bit. So I was born in London, like yourself. We moved to the West Country, university up north, down to the South Coast, then to Oxford, then back to London. And when I got the opportunity to go traveling, it's just something I love. But when I went, when I did my gap year, when I did that whole thing,
I haven't heard that from you.
I was kind of on a time frame, so it felt a little rushed, and I always felt that I'd wanted to stay somewhere and actually just experience living somewhere that wasn't the UK. And so when I met my girlfriend, now wife, she was very much the same. She's an army kid, so had moved around a lot. And so then we started looking at, where are places where, being British, unfortunately, languages aren't my speciality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where language wouldn't be a barrier necessarily, where, and Dubai has always been this, since its inception, has been this kind of built towards being this hub, within the world of whether it's the world of business or travel. It's, so that was the idea, and she managed to talk her boss into funding an office here. So she came out with her sister, did amazingly well. I'd just retrained as a personal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, back then, what are we talking, 2007, I think it was. The internet wasn't what it was today. I'd found one job on the internet for as a personal trainer out here, managed to get it, came out, personal trainer for 11 years and ended up running my own studio. So,
it's a good line of work for Dubai. Back then.
Yeah, I mean, it was, do you know what? It was a little bit Wild West. I always used to say that because it was one of those, at the time, it was one of those jobs that you could get here and just do, and if you kind of knew anything about fitness or you could count, then you could be a personal trainer. And that was the education level, I think. I mean, it's changed massively now. There's some phenomenal trainers here and some phenomenal companies as well. But it felt very Wild West. And I think one of the struggles was educating the public as to, well, why is your fee this and that other person down there is, charging half of what you're doing. But it was great, and I love being in gyms. I just love that environment. I know a lot of people don't, but for me, it's one of my happy places. So it was a great career, and as I say, got to own my own studio, which had always been a dream. So
amazing. Yeah. Well, exercise. I mean, believe it or not, I go to the gym quite a lot. But I also, as an F&B director, I have to eat.
Yeah.
It's part of my job, you know what I mean? Having to eat some amazing food. So my gym routine is try and keep. I haven't changed much, I think, over the last 15 years, which is the biggest compliment my routine has given me. But it is very therapeutic. I have noticed that there is a lot to be said for exercising, lifting weights, shutting down, putting headphones on. You know, those small increments of getting stronger and feeling stronger. You can be very stressed, and you go to the gym, and it comes out of you.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think a lot of people still don't get that. It's not about go to the gym to get abs. Which are impossible. By the way. Do you have abs?
No, I don't. I don't.
Have you? But you must have had.
I had a very good summer.
But abs are ridiculously difficult. As they say, made in the kitchen. So F&B
and it's difficult to maintain as well unless you're genetically gifted that way. You know, all these magazines. I mean, we could get into a very long conversation about that, but you know, this idea that we're supposed to look a certain way. I mean, you know, as we were saying before, you know, we're not dissimilar in age. I think, you know, what you want out of exercise changes a lot as you get older. I mean, one of the things that I always used to find in the gym was people would come in wanting abs, and they'd start training and they'd start enjoying it. And, you know, we used to do small group sessions mainly. So, you know, you've got a bit of a community going, it's a bit of banter going on. And after a while, they're like, do you know what? I don't even care about the abs. I just feel good. I feel better. I look better. You know, my clothes fit better, got more energy, you know, and that was, you know, that was younger people as well. So I think the fitness industry has a lot to answer for in terms of what they've determined, you know, or how they push this idea of what we should look like. But when you get, you know, when you can put that to one side, the benefits of exercise, I mean, we're designed to move. You know, the whole human frame is purely designed for movement. And when we do that, and we, you know, and we stress ourselves in ways that take the mental load away, and you're able to stop thinking about, you know, all the other stuff that's going on in your life. I mean, you know, and there are numerous scientific studies to show the benefits, you know, for mental health. And
well, I was going to say we touched upon that before we actually started recording, and I was going to ask because I believe it's a true statement, which is that the narrative that the health industry now pushes onto guys. The superhero body. I have watched numerous YouTube videos. I think I've watched every YouTube video made about diets, and I also seem to have some weird satisfaction in watching things like Mr. Universe Day of Eating, where some guy says, I'm going to do 8,000 calories, and you just sit there and go, what? You know, and then and I always say, look, it's weird. It's almost like, I'd like to do that. Fry breakfast, then another one. You know what I mean? But it's the bit where he says, I'll go deadlift 1,000 kilos. I'm like, I'm not quite there.
I'm going to be in the gym for 4 hours.
But what's your opinion on how they say, one of my favorite videos is the chicken and broccoli. Chicken and broccoli, you know, for 4 months. And then I ended up looking like Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I mean, is that utter rubbish? Or if you did actually train 2 hours a day, lifting weights, and ate nothing but chicken and broccoli, apart from being mentally boring and no fun to be around, is it possible, or is that not?
Look, I mean, physical change in the body is perfect. It's really possible. I mean, I've done it myself. Right, I've gone from, you know, I think, and I've always been, you know, I'm lucky with my genetics. I've always been relatively slim. I've never had to, you know, lose lots of weight. But I mean, I remember coming over, it's 2007, you know, and I was a personal trainer, but my body fat percentage was probably around, I don't know, let's say 15 to 20%, right? It's, for me, relatively high. Trained for 4 months with a set plan. You know, I was training most days for, not all the way, always with weights, certainly not for any more than an hour a day, and got my body fat percentage down to 10%, you know, and looked a lot different as well. Did it again, you know, when I owned the gym, and again, you know, I mean, I was living in the gym, so, you know, it's very easy then to train. And again, just, an hour, but a plan that I followed to the letter. And the thing I've always struggled with is the kind of eating side of things, because I just like eating. But again, you look at photos with there, it makes me weep because, my arms were really big and I did have abs and I had shoulders and it was wonderful, but really difficult to maintain. So I think it's kind of, that I think one of the things that people miss is, what are you doing it for?
It's a very good point, yeah.
And I think unless you're really clear on what you're doing it for, it's really difficult to stick to something. And again, I get it. Like, a lot of people don't like gyms. There's this whole, I think slightly misplaced feeling that gyms are, all cliquey and just meatheads,
Testosterone.
Yeah, and they're not.
Laughing at small people type.
I mean,
thing.
my mum turned 84 this year, and I remember probably, let's say, when she was similar to my age, and she'd never been to the gym, and she was kind of saying about, that she wanted to go to the gym, and she's like, but I'm really worried because everybody will be looking at me, and I'm like, nobody's looking at you. They're either looking at themselves or they're too busy, focusing on their technique or whatever it is. Like, most people in the gym don't even know there's anybody else in the gym. I mean, that's how I do. I don't talk to anybody, not because I'm antisocial, but just because I'm concentrating on what I'm doing. And so she ended up going to a gym near her, like a real meathead's gym, like sawdust on the floor, like welded together weights and this guy, and the guys there, were like, bodybuilders and powerlifters, but took her and a mate under their wing and showed them how to use the kit. And, and I think I think when you get down to the grassroots of people in gyms, most people are there to make themselves feel better. And by doing that, they're more inclined to help other people to feel better as well, because they see the benefits of it.
Well, I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given in a gym, because I've been going averagely 3 days a week since 2007.
Yeah.
So yes, this is the best I've managed to. I could have won Mr. Universe at that time, but the thing was there's always someone. Take a look around. There's always someone you wish you were, and there's always someone you're glad you're not.
Yeah.
And I think that on those times where you take breaks and you stop and you get weaker or you've hurt yourself so you can't do, chest, and then you go back and you realize, I've got a lot weaker. You just take a look around and you can see that there's always someone that you wish you were, and there's always someone you're glad you're not. And it kind of gives you that, it gives it to me anyway, it gives you that kind of grounding feeling that, okay, just... Because it's easy in the gym in your head to just think, leave now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I've never really had that. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. As I say, it really is one of my happy places. And not because as you'll see, I'm not particularly big. I just enjoy the environment. I enjoy...
You're a personal trainer, and a friend of mine's a personal trainer.
Yeah.
People like myself, we're eaters, F&B people.
Yeah.
It's in the title.
But
and I've suffered from trying to stick to these ridiculous diets whilst trying to do this job.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to eat calories.
Yeah.
I've recently made peace with the fact that, I'll never have abs.
Yeah.
So stop worrying about it.
The beautiful thing is, you've got abs, they're just hidden.
Yeah, that's what
everybody's got.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got.
I just keep them warm.
Yeah,
With this enormous layer of blubber. But so we touched upon mental health, and this is something that you focus deeply on.
Yeah,
and I suppose it is a great conversation to have because, as I said to you before we started recording, I still have that kind of. Your dad smacks you around the head in the 80s and said, well, your granddad was down a coal mine, so stop crying and go to school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how this conversation has been formed, especially in guys. So, So how did this become a thing for you, and how do you facilitate that in your working life?
I think initially it was somebody very close to me, had quite a severe... mental health episode that meant that they were hospitalized and medevaced back to the UK. So that was probably the start of it. But to be honest with you, as you know, as with most things, unless it's to do with you, you're not really that interested. It was when I started to struggle.
Okay.
And I'd always, and not always obviously, but for a long time I'd had these kind of low moods. So, and they might last a day up to 4 days, let's say, but I always knew they were coming, and I would just feel really low, just disinterested in the world, very kind of a lot of negative self-talk, but I just thought they would, just part and parcel of my personality. And it wasn't until my wife, quite recently, I would find myself kind of welling up over nothing, getting really agitated or angry or sullen, with no real kind of understanding of why it was happening. Nothing, no real trigger that I could determine. And she said, "Please go see the doctor." And so I spoke to the doctor, and I was, like most guys, I don't want to be on pill. I'm not going to take pill. I can do this, all by myself. And the doctor's great doctor that we see, and she, very down to earth Northern Irish lady, and she said, "Look, if you had a headache, you'd take a pill. Some people don't, and just happy to suffer with a headache. But it's like, if your brain chemistry isn't wired quite, for want of a better term, normal, what's the thing making you say, well, I don't want to change that? Do you just want to kind of have these moods? If there was something that could make things not, I don't run around really happy, as as lots of people will attest to, but just takes the edge off of that sort of those depressive symptoms. And so I started taking the pills, and I was having some therapy, and to be honest with you, it's been brilliant.
Okay.
Because it really just does take the edge off of it. It doesn't it doesn't mean that I don't get down. It's not blocking any of my feelings, but it just doesn't make them quite as severe. And so for me, it then makes it I'm more able to see situations for what they really are, what control I have over them, and if I don't have control over them, what do I have control over, and how can I affect change that way?
Do you think that's what you said, I think is incredibly poignant in the fact of worrying about things you have no control over?
Yeah.
I mean, we all do it,
Absolutely. I mean, because as we were talking before, I think, we're incredibly complex as human beings. We're, as I said before, we're hardwired to want to be a part of a group. But actually we find being part of a group really difficult, especially in kind of modern society, where we are kind of thrust together with people that, we didn't choose necessarily. They're not family groups, they're work colleagues. And I think, we are constantly of the opinion that we are right. Regardless of the evidence, we seem to have this thing hardwired into us that, what I think is the right thing. If you don't agree with it, it's probably you that's wrong, not me. And so I think it's really difficult to be a human being, especially with, all the modern technologies, and because, our bodies haven't really changed in, I think, what is it? I mean, it depends on what you read, but let's say 300,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Our bodies haven't changed. Our brains haven't. In fact, I was reading a thing the other day that's saying our brain size, they think on average is starting to shrink just because we outsource a lot of our information and data collection.
Yeah.
Right? So if our bodies haven't changed, but everything around us has, it's difficult, and at a speed that we're just not used to. The rate of technological advances is phenomenal. And our brains just aren't set up for it. I mean, the whole stress response that gets a lot of airing. You know what I mean? That was designed for a situation in which you were either being attacked, or you
fight or flight.
Yeah,
fight or flight.
Yeah, your brain has to react really quickly. So you can't have conscious thought about it. It has to be subconscious, and it happens so fast, like incredibly. You can't stop it. Like there isn't a way for your brain, your conscious brain, to be able to go, don't do that before it happens.
Yeah.
When it happens, it happens. But then you get to deal with it, right? And it's how quickly.
And it's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, especially before public speaking, presentations. You know, I've had some pretty harsh cases where suddenly you're 5 minutes away and you just go to bits.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to somehow, you know.
Actually, and you know, and the thing is, we didn't have to do those kind of things. You know, I mean, back in the day, if it was a fight, you'd fight, right? Now,
yeah.
If you get caught up in, you know, a bit of road rage, or somebody's flashing you on Shakespeare Road, you can't, like, you're not going to fight anybody, or you can't physically do anything about it. So you just get angry, and then I mean, you have to deal with that anger and the hormones and whatever that are being released into your body. It takes time to get rid of. So I think it's. I have no idea what the question was now, but
it's a stress response and fight or flight, and how much we haven't changed.
Yeah.
Even though we were in an era. I mean, my one that I love coming back to is the pint of ice cream video that I watched on YouTube, which is you want to have some ice cream. You know, it was by a fitness instructor.
Okay.
And it was talking about eating habits and everything else, and how we're hardwired from cavemen, which is when it comes to sugar. So you think, I'll have a scoop. You get your Haagen-Dazs, you know what I mean? You'll have a scoop. You're like, I'll have a spoon, and then you've eaten the whole thing, and you feel horribly guilty that you've got no self-control over this, and the reality is you don't have the control.
Yeah.
Which is we're hardwired when it comes to sweets and sugar.
Yeah.
That because 300,000 years ago, you're picking berries you'd go out, scavenge and hunt and everything like this. And that you'd find something sweet, your body doesn't know when it's going to get more of it. So eat as much of it as you can whilst you can.
Yeah.
And we still do it.
Yeah.
You know?
And it releases, you know, and the body, you know, it releases certain hormones and certain neurotransmitters and triggers to make you want more of it. You know, the other side of that is that we do have conscious choice, right? There is a conscious choice that your brain is automatically wired to, you know, to get that hit and then want more of it. Doesn't mean you have to give into it unnecessarily, right?
When the brain goes, you'll be all right. You know what I mean? I'm like, no problem, pal.
Yeah. You're going to the gym tomorrow, be fine. You're working all off.
Yeah. I'll do some push-ups.
You know, and I think this is one of the things is that we've forget, you know, because there is, and I am a big proponent, you know, there is this moment, there's a fascinating book by a guy called Viktor Frankl, who was, I think he was a psychologist, might have been Austrian or Polish in the Second World War, he was Jewish, got taken to concentration camps, wrote a book afterwards about his experiences, and his whole thing was, you can take everything away from me, right? Everything, except my choice in how I'll react to a situation. So, you know, and I mean, if you get a chance to read it, it's quite a small book, but it's fascinating. I think it's Man's Search for Meaning. And there's that, right? You can, yes, of course, there are all these external factors, and yes, of course, it's hard, right? You know, and it's not fair. But as I say to my 12-year-old son, nobody told you it was going to be fair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to take responsibility. And I think that's one of the things, the counter to, yes, there are things that happen to our body that we can't stop. But once they've happened, we start to have choices and we start to have reason. And, you know, and so you can't absolve yourself of responsibility.
I get you. You can't just say,
Yeah.
I'm a caveman.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny enough, that's what I actually say to people. I'm a caveman. I'm supposed to do this.
So, you know, I mean, I think for me, it's this finding this balance. And again, you know, this kind of comes back to some of the work that I do where, you know, and I've talked about this with lots of people, is I kind of try to debunk this whole work-life myth thing. Because I'm like, no, there's only life. It's just life, but work is something you balance with all the other things. If you don't have life, you don't have to balance anything, right? Because you're in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
But life is the overriding thing. It's not you're trying to balance life with something. You're just balancing the things within your life. And work is one of those. And, you know, and responsibility and community and fun and all the other things that we like to do. But you can't have it all. And I think, you know, there's a certain element, and look, again, don't get me wrong, I'm a work in progress, as we all are. I just tend to think about this stuff a lot. For me, it's where's your responsibility lie within all of this? And I'm a big proponent of Stoic philosophy. I believe, you know, we have our choices. That's the thing we have control over. And if you give that away, if you say, oh, you know, it's because of that other thing, you've what do you have left? Nothing. You know, you're just some victim, and nobody wants to be a victim, right? No. But you have a choice, and I'm not, you know, and there are quite extreme examples where choices are really hard.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if you're I don't know, if you're kidnapped and held prisoner, let's say, you know, where are your choices? Well, your choice is, how do I respond each day to what's being done to me? You know, if you get cancer, you know, it's horrible disease. And, you know, there will be times where you desperately, you know, you will feel sorry for yourself, because we all do it and nobody is perfect at any of this stuff. But you also have choices, whether you like it or not, you've got choices always. And that's and so if you give that responsibility away, then you're left with absolutely nothing. I think that's the worst place to be.
No, I hear you. I wanted to ask, when you said work-life balance, because this gets tossed around a lot. I sort of subscribe to the notion that work is supposed to be challenging. Yeah. And then going to work and getting through those challenges, you feel really good coming out the other side. Yeah. Even though I don't get that right every time, even though I've failed. I do subscribe to the notion you either win or you learn, but then I can beat myself up terribly about failure. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I wanted to ask sort of, what did, in your experience with your coaching and your leadership stuff and mentoring, everything you've done, where people say, I hate my job, and there they are 9 hours a day. So you're there more than you're going to do anything else. You're going to spend more time at work than you do with anyone else, you know, and you hate it. Yeah. Okay. But what do you think constitutes how do you constitute enjoying your job? Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, because I, just to sort of, the last couple of things I'd like to sort of qualify that statement is, I manage a lot of people. I've always managed a lot of people, and I've done it now for best part of 22 years, managing different departments and teams in different sort of spaces. One thing I always say when people are not happy of how they got spoken to, whether they're happy or not, is, I could get in trouble for this, is I actually said this yesterday, and I said to somebody, you know, with respect, go get your contract, show me the line that says, I will be spoken to exactly how I want to be spoken to every time I'm at work. Yeah. And show me the other line that says, I'm paid to be happy. Yeah. And they don't exist, and you can't give me a contract in the history of history that ever says it, because it doesn't exist. So what, like I say, how would you sort of quantify enjoying your job? Like,
well, I mean, one of the things I get is
I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it does, 100%. Excuse me. I think one of the things is this idea of happiness, and it's a word that gets bandied around, and I don't think lots of people know what it means, because it's a very personal thing. So, you know, I think there's that. I think a lot of people mistake happiness and comfort. I think they think the two things are the same, that if I'm comfortable, then I'm happy. And I would disagree with that. I don't think we're designed to be comfortable. I don't think growth happens there. I don't think we get any sense of purpose from that, and I don't think we necessarily get any sense of achievement from being comfortable or happy. But again, I don't know. It's difficult to say what happy means. So I guess one of the things that when I work with people is this idea of, well, when you say happy, what do you mean? And more often than not, it's like, well, they asked me to do something and it's not, I don't normally do that. And it's like, well, so you've been, why would they ask you? What's made them ask you to do that? And whatever it might be. And then you get round to the fact that, it might well be you've been asked to do something else because somebody's seen some potential in you.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing is them, trying to put more work on top of you, because we seem to have got, to a certain degree, to a place where we want to do, we want everything and then we'll do the work for it. So give it to me first and then I'll do the work.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to put the work in. I mean, you look at any of the talks or whatever by, people who have, for want of a better word again, success, that's as a standard. And what they say is that they put the hard job. You do the work when people aren't watching you. No. In the hope that somebody will notice it, but also to give yourself evidence so that when you feel ready, you can go to your line manager and say, look, I've been doing this job, but I've also been doing all of this stuff as well. That to me shows initiative, it shows drive, motivation, all the things that I believe this company wants, I'm exhibiting. The next time there's a promotion or, a pay rise. But it's this idea of, my wife works for a marketing agency, and, so many times she comes back and she's like, just going to the office so people can ask me for a pay rise.
Yeah.
Without any, no evidence behind it. It's just, I think I should get a pay rise because, the industry norm, I've seen this on some website. And I think, somehow we've got ourselves to that position. But I mean, going back to the question of, how somebody hating their job, I think, everything is about perception.
Yeah.
And, we were talking when we were coming up in the lift, and you saying to people, well, do you want a job or do you want a career? And if you want a job,
yeah,
absolutely
perfect. Yeah. You want a job? No worries.
Because the world needs people who want to do jobs, who just want to clock in and clock out. But the world also needs people who want careers. And I think a lot of the time people want what comes with the career, and the money, the status, whatever. But are they willing to put the hard yards in, when they're not getting paid for it, when they're having to do extra hours? And so I think it's about shifting people's perceptions. It's about saying, you say you hate your job. What do you hate about your job? What is it specifically you hate about your job? And how can you reframe that? And if you can't reframe that, if your boss, if you need that job, you could be looking for other jobs, absolutely. But if you need that paycheck and your boss is horrible, that's the situation. You have to accept that and then look at what change can I affect? Am I able, when I get my big boy pants on, to go and say to my boss, look, I don't want to kind of create a scene here, but I find our interactions stressful. I don't find that I'm going to get, you're going to get my best work. And I feel if we could have, a different dialogue, we would both be happier. Or, You think, actually, I just need to go in and get this done until I get another job. And you accept that that's the situation.
Yeah.
And then you commit to affecting change. And ways that you can do that are, find something outside of work that you love doing, that you look forward to going to. Even as little as finding somebody else in the office who hates their job as well, and then having a bit of a rant together and the coffee break. Do you know what I mean? But you have to accept the situation. That's the very first principle of any of this, is you identify what the issue is, and then you have to accept how the situation is right there in that present moment. And then you get to say, what are my choices?
I like that. Just this is what the beauty of these sort of conversations is, especially in this environment, which is quite intense, because we don't really know each other and we're being filmed and it's going to go out on LinkedIn and everything else. See, your sort of brain is picking up on things very sort of immediately, but it's like, if you hate your job, you have to understand it's not your job's fault.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that is because unless everyone hates their job, right? So it's that majority rule. So if you work in an office with 100 people and all 100 of you absolutely hate your job, then maybe the boss has got something to think about.
Yeah.
But if there are people that you work with that really enjoy what they're doing and they really enjoy what they're doing, but you hate it, like you say, you got to own that, and you got to go, right, coming into work and being negative, toxic and miserable about my working environment is not going to change it.
No.
The only thing that's going to change it is the contents of my head, which is it either needs to get out of here as quickly as possible, or I need to start looking at this in a way where, what can I get out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, and it all comes back to this, sense of responsibility. Do we give our sense of responsibility away to other people? And that's really easy, right? Everybody likes a bit of the blame game. It's always there for, I mean, this would be a good example as to how imperfect I am. I'm terrible on the roads. I'm a horrible human being on the roads, and I make myself ashamed most times.
Road rage, or just, you don't indicate, or you just
no. I mean, I follow the rules.
Okay.
I'm of that generation of British people. I follow the rules, and I love a good rule. And if you don't follow the rules, then there's something, you're doing it wrong. I'm doing it correctly. But every time I get the car, and it is a work in progress. I'm trying to make it better. In some days it's better, and some days it's not. But fact of the matter is, if I say, get out the car and say it was their fault, that all of this anger and this frustration and starting my day in a really bad mood is somebody else's fault, how can I change it? I've got to go and find that person and ask them to drive properly, or be nice to me, or let me in when I'm indicating. And what hell am I going to do? And if I follow somebody home, get arrested. So it's that sense that it's your responsibility to make the change.
I definitely believe is that when you go into leadership, and this is 100% true.
Yeah.
If your boss comes into work in a terrible mood, it trickles all the way down. And I think the essence to being a very effective leader, I don't want to say good, because sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad, and life, you can't help what happens to you people that, I've done some training classes with managers where I'm like, hands up who doesn't bring their problems to work, and I'm like, you liar. I can't say exactly what I say, you liar, because everyone does. Of course you bring your problems to work, because it's life, I think the effectiveness is when you can have it on the inside and you don't show it on the outside, because your problems are your problems.
Yeah.
But in my line of work, the bartenders, the waitresses, etc., they're down on what I refer to as the front line. I'm not serving the people. These guys are actually giving the word of mouth advertising, delivering the service after the product. If my actions cause them to clam up around me, think they can't express themselves, think they shouldn't say that, he's in a bad mood, or like this, the whole day can be really badly affected by the fact that I'm just simply look like I'm not happy.
Yeah.
It's
and that's it. Again, because we were talking a little bit beforehand, we were saying how so there was a poll that came out by Gallup about employee engagement, and this region did pretty badly, I think, of like out of 100% of people that were questioned, 23% said that they were engaged in their work, which gives you basically, over 70% of people are either turning up for work and just going through the motions, or they're actively looking for other jobs, right? And Gallup's findings from this were that a lot of this comes from employee engagement and culture, comes from leadership, right? Which kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Even if it comes down to is the boss in a good or a bad mood today? I think the kind of pertinent bit with that is that a lot of people get promoted into leadership and don't get any leadership training or any help or mentoring.
Yeah, that's pretty true, yeah.
And I think a lot of people who, when we were talking about, do you want a job or a career? Well, a lot of people want a job with more money.
Yes.
So when a promotion comes up, they're the solid person. They've been there for 7 years. They've never taken a sick day, whatever. They get promoted. But what they suddenly realize when they're put in a leadership role is that they don't like leadership. What they liked was coming in, clocking out. They don't want the extra responsibility, because the extra responsibility is not doing more of that job. It's leading people.
Well, the thing I acknowledged quite quickly, and somebody taught me this statement, which is so I was a bartender.
Yeah.
Okay. And I make the drink from start to finish, give it to the guests. They like it or they don't. They pay for it, et cetera, right? The minute I became head bartender, it was said to me, well, now you're going to be judged on what other people are doing and how they're making their drinks.
Yeah.
And then really the drink is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's now the person.
Yeah.
And then when I came out of the bar and started running venues, it's even more so, which is it's my problem is how they make the drinks.
Yeah.
So I can go and tell them their drinks are wrong, but I'm not going to make that right for them. I don't suddenly say to the whole of the Garden on 8 restaurant team, everyone go home. I'm serving every table today. And if I did, it'd be a disaster.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been a waiter or bartender for 25 years. But I think that was one of the things I got to grips with that hit me quite quickly, which is I'm now responsible for the people that are delivering the product. Yeah. And then suddenly now my product is the people.
Yeah.
And it's a big...
And I think that's one of the it's such a massive lesson. And I think, if this Gallup survey is to be believed, I think a lot of the issues around leadership probably lie within that remit, that you've got people who were really good at their jobs that got promoted, but they didn't necessarily have to be really good with people. And people are the most difficult asset of any business, right? Because they're all individual.
But we are.
Yes, yes.
We are.
Yes.
They are.
No. It's everybody else, not me. No, you're right. That we are, because it's ridiculously complex.
Yeah. And there are so many things that impact us on a daily basis that, I don't know if I've ever said it during a podcast, but I've been saying this a lot recently. I realized that I was consuming noise. Like, I realized that my attention span had gone.
Yeah.
And I started to really be aware of what I was consuming through YouTube and Instagram and social media. And I realized that I was watching people argue.
Right.
And it was starting to have so what I mean by that is I wasn't going on YouTube and go people arguing. It was where I follow football, English, of course, and games are happening and I'm on Talk Sport. And what I'm looking at is I'm more in the bit where the fans are phoning in and they're all arguing and shouting at each other than I was the actual proper reporting.
Yeah.
Where you're getting let's say a relatively expert opinion.
Yeah.
And I realized that I'd gone from watching movies, which is something I was always super passionate about doing, to watching YouTubers discussing movies before I'd seen it.
Right.
And so I'm now, what comes up on your feed is it's now this one and this one discuss the new Star Wars film, for instance, and it's terrible and they're arguing and this and that, and now I don't want to watch it, and now I just think it's all bad.
Yeah.
And I became very aware of this, and I've stopped doing it. Yeah. Where I think we were talking about it, so you said how you'd stop listening to the news.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're consuming and what we're becoming first thing in the morning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're carrying this narrative into work, and I became aware of, am I getting myself into situations where I am purposely starting to debate and create these narratives because this is what I'm now becoming used to.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how much it has an effect on us. You know,
I mean,
like you said, you stop watching the news.
Yeah.
So.
But you know, I mean, I can't remember what the numbers are, but you know, certainly the information that our brains are fed on a daily basis through our eyes, our ears, our our taste buds, smell, whatever, touch, is phenomenal. I mean, you would go literally mad if you were actually consciously absorbing all of that. So the brain has to, and it's a great machine for finding patterns and seeing things, so that it doesn't have to look at everything. It understands, it can hone in on things, but you're also not consciously aware of everything that's going on around you. It's why, what I call them eyewitness statements, so terribly inaccurate, right? And then, I mean, there was a study that I was reading about the other day where they had AI thing, and so they had all of these old cases and the verdicts and whatever, and they fed it into this AI thing, and they also gave it to judges and police officers and whatever, and said to them, what do you think? Who do you think's guilty? Whatever, and it was the how did it work out? The AI kind of was more accurate at reading people. That was it. It was look at this person. This is the background to this person. Did they commit this crime?
Mm-hmm.
And 100%, like judges, policemen, all the other people, the people involved in it, getting it wrong time and time and time again. And although the AI didn't get it right all the time, it was more accurate. And I think it's this thing where we think what we see is true reality,
mm-hmm.
but actually what we're experiencing is just what our brain is making out of all of the electrical signals coming from our ears, eyes, our mouth, nose, our fingers. And it kind of, for me, it was quite a staggering thing to think that, none of this is really real. I mean, that's not to say that, I'm in the Matrix.
You backed yourself into a corner with it, didn't you?
No, but it's purely my perception of what's happening, and you will have a completely different perception. I mean, I've got a ridiculously terrible memory, and it, I mean, we were talking about something in the car the other day. I can't even remember what it was. See, that's how bad it is. But I was, and my wife and my son, they went, oh yeah, we did this and we did that, and it was only a couple of weeks ago. And they're like, do you remember that? I'm like, no, like not at all, not even a glimmer of anything.
Yeah.
So, what's happening in here is the thing that's determining how you react. And when you realize that it's not what's out here that's making you determine, it's
how you're reacting
and how you're perceiving it. And you're perceiving it, can be completely different to everybody else, but you think this is what everybody else is experiencing.
And the problem in leadership is that you feel a compulsion to be correct.
Yeah.
So this is another thing I've realized, that when you grow up and you become my age, our age, sort of nearly 50, around the 50 marker, and you have a lot of responsibility, you have a lot of experience, which everybody's, look how much experience he has, and experience in the world, is that you start feeling, you start feeling compelled to give an answer.
Yeah.
Instead of sit there and go, I actually have no idea, what to say. And I think over the last 18 months, I'm trying very hard to know when to say, I am your boss.
Yeah.
I actually said to somebody in a one-to-one last week, I said to him, am I right? Am I wrong? Tell me. And the reason I love him and the reason why I'm glad he works, and I won't say his name, is that he said, I think you're wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm 48 and he's 29.
Yeah.
And he runs one of my restaurants and I don't.
Yeah.
I manage him.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but I was really passionate about what I was doing. Like in my head, no, that's the direction.
Yeah.
And then we're having this debate, and it's of very differing opinions. And I said to him, am I wrong? And he put it very well, but he went, yes.
Yeah.
I genuinely think you're wrong. I said, okay, I'll back you.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to go, ha, ha, ha. No. But it is that moment to, like you've just said, it's your perception versus somebody else's perception. And I think in leadership, we have this compulsion to want to be correct, which I think can fail us.
And look, I mean, changing behaviors is incredibly difficult, especially like you say, when you get a little longer in the tooth. And I think, again, the way we're fed things instantaneously, there is a subconscious assumption that it can, you can change overnight. And whilst you, to a certain degree, you can change in an instant. If you're sad and you think happy thoughts, you change, right? You become happy. But long-lasting change where you are redirecting neural pathways in your brain takes a long time. And I think sometimes we don't have the appetite to give it the amount of attention that it needs.
How long do you think it takes?
The last study I read was 63 days to embed a new neural pathway.
Just over 2 months to form a new habit.
Yeah. But so what you're having to do is, and again, actually, my tutor in the coaching thing was saying, it's like you're in the jungle and there's a path, and the path is well trod and well, and so everybody uses it. But then you realize that actually there's a quicker route to where you want to go to if you go off that path and go right. But that path is still looks, when you look at it, it's all clear and looks really easy. This one's a lot harder. You've got to hack through it with a machete to get, to start, and then you've got to keep using it to make it to get it to the point where it stays clear and it's always there. And it's exactly the same. And then this one over time will the original one will become
covered,
overgrown. Yeah. And it's not easy. And I think, a lot of the time what you get fed with YouTube and other social media channels are available, is that there is some kind of quick fix to all of this. And it's not, and you will, like you said, failure seems to be a dirty word, but if you think of failure as steps in learning, you'll fail more times, than you'll care to count. But at some point you'll look back and you'll realize how far you've come. And, but it is that, like you were saying, you became aware of something that you were doing. You accepted that, that it might need change, and you committed to changing it. Now, you don't do it all the time. Nobody does, we're imperfect. But if you're doing it more than you're not doing it, then over time it becomes that embedded habit. So like I say, I think rambling on a bit, but
no, it's good.
I think it's really, we overcomplicate so many of these things as well. It drives me up to be honest with you, because, and some, because I'm a business owner, and everything is linked in here. So, I have to be posting on LinkedIn all the time. And so you've got to come up with ideas. And I'm like, but my genuine belief is that all of this is relatively uncomplicated, right? It's we were going to get T-shirts made of this when I owned the gym. Simple, not easy. Most of it is simple. It's just not easy to do because you're trying to change habits that have ingrained, and the way that society works, the speed of which everything is delivered and given to you and brought to you and asked of you these days doesn't sit well with committing to long-lasting, and it's about consistency and it's about patience, and if you can nail those two down, and break down the job to be done into its component parts and just nail them, consistently and patiently, and be kind to yourself when you do fail, then you'll get there eventually. But you've got to have that patience.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect place to end. Not to do with, no, I mean, we usually do 45 minutes to an hour or thereabouts. I did have other questions. I think this conversation has been fascinating and I've really, really enjoyed it.
I have as well. It's been brilliant.
It's more about, as I love with this, is to get into the thought patterns of people rather than just sitting here going, they should do this, and they should do that. But yeah, so look, Chris, we agreed to do this yesterday. We met 20 minutes before we started recording. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you so much.
No, thank you
for doing it.
It's been brilliant.
And I think people that watch this will be one of the better ones.
I hope so.
I'm gonna have to apologise to every other guest for saying that. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.